ding, gong. Okay, so here's the other point here. So I've got this problem here. I'm already going vertical to horizontal. In the old days of music teaching, there would be these dots called notes that would be in front of you too. You'd actually be sitting at the piano or the keyboard and you'd be looking at these dots that were on stuff called staff or musical staff. And it would be lines and spaces and ledger lines and all kinds of things floating around that your brain would have to translate from these dots in order to these letters, in order from the vertical letters to the horizontal letters. All three things. Not in Studio E KEYSongs, a real mallet, a real gong. Not in Studio E KEYSongs, a real mallet, a real gong. You know why? Because in Studio E KEYSongs, we only deal with this. We don't deal with these dot transformation in your brain. If you go over the dot transformation in your brain, it's taking too much brain energy. You can go from this to this to this, which they expect you to do from the very beginning in music learning or whatever. No. I'm not doing that. We're going from this out 5 years from now. No more dots. Just this. And understanding what is in this. What is more than this? Not only is it going from the vertical to the horizontal, it is going from the positioning of going from chromatic city, where all 12 letters live next to each other, apartment buildings and yards and everything, every possible person and everything in the world in chromatic city was down there. And then a bunch of frontiersmen, pilgrims, left chromatic city and went west and went out and formed a town. They formed the suburbs of chromatic city where every letter was. And they said, you come out here and we're going to use your chromatic city lettering to letter our streets. And we're going to have a town and it's going to have, get ready y'all, here's the second 12 of the night. It's going to have 12 streets. So, a town not only has, the world not only has 12 possible letters in chromatic city, first point. Second point, now it has 12 possible streets in a town that was formed outside of chromatic city called the suburbs. And what was the name of that town? What was the name of that town? It came from chromatic city, so what was the name of the town? Well, it was the first town, and it was the first big, huge thing that ever happened out there, and so they call it the Major Town, M-A-J-O-R, Major Town. And Major Town was the foundation for all other towns out in the suburbs. And Major Town had a board of trustees and a zoning board and a police department and a fire department and all kinds of things that a normal town would have. And in that town of 12 streets represented by a letter. From the town of chromatic city, the suburbs moved out, and the board of trustees and the zoning board got together and said, well, we're going to use every single letter possible. And they were the 12 letters A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, and G sharp. All of those letters are going to be a name of each street. In each street, per block on each street, are going to be 8 houses. 8 houses represented by letters, a direct address. Like you can mail to them. You could send some packages there. You could postcard there. You could find their address easily and look what their house looks like in relation to the whole block. Because each block had a certain prescription, or not a certain description. And that description was each block in Major Town will have 8 houses. But then again, I was also talking about distance. There is a distance measurement that happens in these streets set by the zoning board. The zoning board, just like anyone, says your yard property will be so much measurement from one house to the next. So here we have Major Town Board of Trustees setting the rule that there will be 8 houses per block. There will be 12 streets in the town and there will be 8 houses per block. The zoning board comes along and says, well, if you do a plot of land, and notice I have to look like this, like a sergeant, with a helmet on, you will have a zoning plan that you will map out your houses with. Every single one of those 12 streets will have this zoning rules that will say that you will have this distance between each house. Those each houses on which will formulate 8 houses per block will formulate by measuring in half and whole steps. A whole meaning 2 halves equals a whole. Why? Because 1 is where we start. 1 is the first name of the street. 1 is the first house on the street. It's 1. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. 1 is the bottom of the street, or the beginning of the street, beginning of the block. 1. That means there's 12 ones in Major Town. Ding. Dong. Hey, ding dong, ding dong. A ding right here, hitting that symbol. Hitting the symbol with the dinger is a ding dong. Ding dong. Important point. The first house on a block is the name of the street. So, there is an existence in Major Town. 12 different letters, 12 different houses, all lines in a nice row as the first house on every block of the town of pilgrims that have left Chromatic City and moved out to the suburbs and made themselves Major Town. With the zoning boards declaring from the first house to the second house, it will be 1 whole step. 1W, 1 whole step. We'll have to go a whole step, honey, in order to get to our neighbor's house. Okay. Whole step. But then sometimes you have to go whole steps where you're going between a letter and a sharp letter, from going to B to C sharp. C is in between. In-betweens, the introduction of in-betweens. A whole step has 1 note in between. Yes, it's equal to 2 half steps, but it's also 1 note in between. 1 note in between, what do you mean? Why do I have to know that in between stuff? Because what if you were on a sharp side of the street and you wanted to go a whole step higher and you wanted to see it right away? The best way to do it is look in between and make sure you have 1 note in between, which would be D, and you go to D sharp and be 1 note in between instantly. You know you went a whole step higher. Higher, 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 higher. Sides of the street, there's different pictures happening in your mind. You got to know a definition of distance to make sure to check yourself quickly that, yes, I have gone a whole step. Because it's so important, because when I'm in a town and I'm trying to find the next house in the block because I'm wandering and I'm new to this city, I'm new to coming out and visiting the suburbs here, and I'm trying to find an address, and I'm going around on my horse, as we're pilgrims, go around on my horse and try to find the second house on the street, I gotta go a whole step. I gotta learn what a whole step is. I gotta go the distance of a whole step. Now is where it gets cool. We've gone 1 whole step from 1. What do you think that address is? It ain't 1, even though you've gone a whole 1. It ain't 1, because 1 is where you were. You were at the first house on the street before you even went that whole step. So you've gone to the second house on the street. Instead of lettering in their heads and making all kinds of different squiggly distances between houses, they decided we're going to make a uniform way that every one of our streets in Major Town looks like. And every one of those streets are going to be represented by 12, the magic number in music, 12 street names. Those street names are represented by each of the 12 possible created letters that came from Chromatic City, which are 5 sharp higher notes, sharp letters, and 7 letters, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Then we'll go starts all over again, A, B, C, F, G, but can you say it backwards, G, F, E, D, C, B, A? Or all the sharps, C sharp, D sharp, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp. Those 5 plus those 7 make 12 possible positions, places in a block before they start repeating each other. But in a block, that same letter as the beginning would have to be 1 and 8. But in between the 1 and 8, that was the only thing that the people that said, when you leave the big city, you got to make blocks. And those blocks go sometimes out towards the woods where they get lower and lower and lower, 8 houses at a time, jumping down to the next block, or the blocks get higher and higher and higher as they get closer to the city. Higher, higher, higher. These octave blocks, these 8 houses, are if you're in Major Town. And those 8 houses are spaced in between each other by a formula made by the zoning board of the town government. The zoning board said you will have each house spaced this way. A whole step will go to the second house. A whole step will go to the third house. A half step will get to the fourth house. A whole step will get to the fifth house. A whole step will get to the sixth house. A whole step will get to the major 7th house. Ding, major, ding, M-A-J, whoa. But you have one note in between, like you go 2 half steps, which makes one note in between. That means you could be in a sharp and have to go to a letter, but you have to make a letter and in between note. It has to have one note in between. It's such a great proven measurement way to look at in between notes. Even though technically you're going 2 half steps, you're really looking at a whole step as being one note in between. Why? Because if you're in Major Town, there's only 1 half step in between the 8th house and the major 7th house. And the reason it has MAJ7 in front of it is because there's another town that was being created at the same time that Major Town was. It was created, a bunch of other people left the city, and they created another town right next door to Major Town that had 12 streets. And you know what it was called? Blues Town. And Blues Town was really cool because instead of having one of these distances of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all orderly like Major Town did, they said, no, we're not going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, major 7, 8. And remember that word major 7 because that always goes with a 7 in a major town was the little M-A-J. The reason a little M-A-J goes with the 7 is because at the same time, over next door, Blues Town was creating a letter of a house called a 7 with no M-A-J in front of it. Difference? There is a whole step, one note in between the 8th house and the 7th house. And in Major Town, there's only a half step in between E and D sharp, for example. This would be from like E to D. Difference, ding, definition, important. Major Town Zoning Board said we have to make some kind of address on our numbering system so we know it's R, D sharp. Blues Town said, I need to have some certain address to know that it's a 7, not a major 7. It's a whole step away from the 8th house on the block or the same house as a 1. And as we know, each block has a number 1 and a number 8 that it shares. But you're looking at it and you're saying, no, there's more than that, Jim. There's more than 1 and 8 that share. What do you mean there's more than 1 and 8? Well, look at it. You have 1, 1, the number 1, and the number 1, right? Well, you don't have a M3. This says M, by the way. That's a little M. You don't have M3, and you have a 3. So that's not the same. You don't have any 2 in a Blues Town. Oh, by the way, this is a Blues Town. On the left here is a Blues Town. On the right here is a Major Town street. By the way, right away you say there's 8 houses in a major street, and there's only 7. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. From between 1 and 8, there's only 7 houses Between, if it's a 1, it could be anywhere in either town, like E1, F1, F sharp 1, F1, G1, G sharp 1, whatever note you start on. D sharp 1, D, E1, F1, whatever note is your first note, that is considered the first house on the block of either a major town or a blues town. That's the first house. That's the name of the street. E, Blues Street. Both begin with the letter E. Point. 8th house on the block, the octavio is the same letter too. 8, 8. But in between, there's these cool differences. Instead of having a second house, which is an interval of a 2 or a second, there's no such thing in a blues town. There's no interval of a 2 in there on their streets. Their first interval to their second house is an M3. We were talking about M3s last night. It's just an interval, believe me. An M3, a minor third, is the first distance that you go to in blues town. So both of them have already distinct individualities when you're first starting down a street. There's a whole step and then a whole step in order to get from the first to the third house. There's no whole step and whole step. There's just one kind of jump, which happens to be a whole step and a half step, which is an M3. Because going to a 3 in a major town is really a whole step and a whole step, as designed and saw by the zoning law that began WW. That got you to 3. Well, if I say W1/2, that doesn't get you to WW. Whole. Remember WW. If I go whole plus whole, that equals a 3. Believe it or not, that's true. 2 whole steps equals a 3. But if I go whole plus half, because it could be a whole plus a half, it equals M3. Boot. M3. And M3 is designated with an M in front of it. It has a little M before the number 3. Otherwise, a 3 is just a 3. Difference. Blues town has a M3. Major town has a 3. Difference between the two streets. Let's just go ahead into uncharted territory. What about the 4th house on the street? By the way, the 4th house just happens to be, as originated by the first zoning board, a whole, then another half. If you had 2 wholes and then a half, you would get to a 4th. Now we have jumps of an interval of a second or a whole step, which is W, or an M3, which is a whole step plus a half step. One little squeeze a little bit bigger than a whole step is a M3, because 2 whole steps, as decided from the major town when they first decided, gave you to 3, to the 3rd house. So we have no similarities till we get to the 4th house, and by golly, they're both a whole step and a half step away. Same distance from each other, same house. In Blues Town, they noticed that there was a note, as we have to go from a whole step from a 4 to a 5 no matter what, as designated from the first original major town. There's a whole step, a whole and a half, then we have to go another whole. That's what it said in the original zoning law of major town when they first left the city. They go, this is the zoning. So they have to go a whole step away from a 4 in order to get to the 5th house. What if I change this W to 1/2? I'm going to hit a note. If I look at like 4 notes in between from E to A, or whole step, half step. Now look at this. If I go to 5 notes in between, 5 notes in between is 6 notes in between. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. From E to B, there's 6 notes in between. From E to A, which is the 4th, there's 4 notes in between. Get it? 4 notes in between to 6 notes in between. Hey, what's 5 notes in between? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is another interval. It has to be. Because we know that every single step in between creates an interval. Whether you have 1 note in between, 2 notes in between, 3 notes in between, 4 notes in between, get to a 4th. 5 notes in between to get to a 5th? No. Because by the zoning laws that were zoned, that we have to go a half step and then another whole step to get to 5, created that half-step differential, and that means we have a new interval. What are we going to name it? We can't name it a 4 because it's not a 4. We can't name it a 5, as we created by major town, 5. What are we going to name it? We're going to name it a sharp 4. We're going to sharp it. We're going to, as a sharp raises anything, we're going to take that 4 and we're going to raise it. What does a sharp do? It raises anything by 1/2 step. If you're on B and you sharp it, yes, you go to C, because that is a half step away. The rule of a sharping is to go half step. So if I want on a 4, like E to A, and I need to get to that 5 note in between, and remember E to B is a 5. As designated by major street, they already did the formulation, and here's where it started. If I had an E1 as my first house on the street, by the time I got to the 5th house on the street, it would be a B. But I'm not talking about B here. I'm talking about A sharp. I'm talking about the note in between A and B. This note right here, that note, they had to come around with some kind of address. So they said, we'll call it a sharp 4. We'll raise that 4 1/2 step, and we'll call it sharp 4. Everyone said, that's good. We'll call it sharp 4. And for a long time, it's sharp 4. And then it spread, sharp 4, sharp 4. They didn't like just a sharp with the number or whatever. They said, hey, you know what? We could put a little plus sign, and that will make it sharp in our little mathematical minds. So we see plus 4. It will be a raised 4, a sharp 4th, but it will just have a plus in front of it. It'll have a little plus. It takes that 4 and it just sharps it. And we could put a sharp here instead of this plus. But in musical terminology and whatever, they made it a plus. They, meaning the Board of Trustees of the world of music. So we will call it with a plus. This way, starting on 1 and going higher in pitch, going up, but at the same time going right. From a 1 to an M3 to a 4 to a plus 4. They wanted a house in Bluestown that sounded and was 4 and then plus. So you had 1, M3, then 4, then plus it. They have already started into some cool sounds, and that's because Major Town is cool. Oh, excuse me, Bluestown. Wait a minute. Hold on. Wait. Bluestown. Major Town. Bluestown. What town are you in? Just remember, what town are you in? Cross the boundary, all different kinds of streets. Excellent. So, the first house is the same. The 4th house is the same. They both have a G house. We're talking about D Street now. The second and the 3rd house are different. The second and the first, there's no second house, and there's a minor 3rd and M3 house over here. Really cool stuff, right? Now watch this. There's an additional house put in here that's not in here, which is a plus 4 house. They both have 4 houses, but now they have a plus 4 house in Bluestown. And that's what I was saying sound cool. 1 to plus 4. 5 notes in between to a plus 4. It's a 4th that's sharp. Just raise that 1/2 step, a cool interval. And also made a house, it's so important, in Blue Street. Sharp 4, 4, M3, 1. Sharp 4, 4, M3, 1. Let's do it. I'll shift that all to the next street over. E blues. Sharp 4, 4, M3, 1. Listen to it. Isn't that cool? This has that really cool dark, let's boogie down, let's get into some new different things sound. But right on top of that plus 4, the next house you're going to hit on the street is a 5. You can't avoid it. Once you go to plus 4, there's no double plus 4. You're just going to go to 5. And by golly, in both streets, there is a 5. Look at A in D Street. Both of them have a 5. They both have it. That's so cool. They both have a 5. They both have a 4. They both have a 1. That's some similarities between the two streets. Why is that important to know? Well, I'm telling you that there's 12 8-house apiece streets in Major Town. I'm telling you that there's 12 7-house block streets in Bluestown. I'm telling you to memorize the addresses of them. Letter plus numbered interval of where they are off of the beginning. You're like, that's impossible. I'm like, no, it's not, because there's repetition. There's another E, repeating. In Studio E, we have all these things that we always do all the time. Repeat is a lot. Music repeats itself over and over and over again. Octaves repeat themselves over and over and over again. The letters repeat themselves over and over again. You will play millions and 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 billions of the same letters over and over again. You will play millions and millions and millions of intervals jumping from one letter to the other at the same time too. Why will you be doing that? Because they are matching. I already told you a couple of matching things. They repeat each other. They're not that difficult. So your brain can figure it out. It just needs to learn all of the intervals within each street. So it can identify what house you're on in each street, because it's very, very important for the building blocks of the future.